So I just came from the doctor's a little while ago. And this was my third follow-up exam. This was with my midwife. My PCP had directed me to go see my OBGYN to follow up more extensively with some of the symptoms that I was experiencing. They wanted to check for, uterine fibroids or endometriosis, and also to check the placement of my IUD to see if there was any risk of perforation, if that had become displaced, and that might be contributing to some of the other symptoms that I was having, in addition to some of the tests that they have been running for, like my TSH and my adrenal glands, and the SED tests and C-reactive and all of that. And so I went to see my midwife, and really, I think that I've been dealing with some feelings of like guilt that I probably should have scheduled this appointment sooner. But I've also felt so confused about like what the right course of action should be, which is why I wanted to follow up with my primary, because I just wanted to make sure that we were exploring the proper diagnosis in every avenue, and not to risk like a loss of continuity of care. So I kind of wanted to follow up with him first, and then get him on board that I was following up with my OBGYN. So that's what I had done at my last follow-up appointment. So anyway, my Paragard has been partially expelled, and I have an infection, which there's no way to really time how long this infection has existed, or how, whether it's been recurrent or what. But this is, based on the symptoms, based on the evidence, it's worth suggesting that my body has been fighting this infection recurrently, and that's why I've had moments where I feel a little bit better, and then I have times where I am just floored because my immune system has just been fighting the infection off, and then the infection flares back up because the IUD was only partially expelled, so it was still kind of sitting as as a foreign object. My immune system's recognizing it as something that needs to be removed. And so what's peculiar is that my blood counts were not showing evidence of an infection. That's one of the first things that we looked at. But it was very apparent that this has been ongoing probably since maybe October, possibly longer than that. And I just wanted to get down and make a record of what I'm feeling right now, because I know that later it's going to be even harder for me to articulate it, because it's not going to be fresh in my mind. But when Karen, who's my midwife, when she told me what was going on, obviously they had to remove the Paragard, which immediately filled me with fear, because it's a painful process to do that. I've done it before, and immediately the first thing I thought about was that I was alone, and that there was no one there with me. There was no one to be there with me to do this, to support me, to be next to me, to be there physically with me, and that I had to go through this alone. But also just this overwhelming sense of I don't know. I broke down on the exam table, and I was crying, and at the same time I was like, I didn't want to get emotional because I didn't want to be all, hysterical in the office, but I also didn't want to cut that off. I wanted to give myself space to just feel whatever I was feeling, because I've been struggling so much with disassociation with my emotions. But I was, I think that it's just intuitive for me, especially, to just, want to hold it together and, wait until I have someplace private to be emotional and so on. But you know, it's hard for me to identify really what I'm feeling, what I was feeling in that moment, what I'm still feeling now. A lot of fear. I mean, the idea that I've been walking around with this infection, and that, I mean, listen, this is like, I mean, people die from stuff like this, you know? I've read articles about, you know, women who get flu-like symptoms and don't realize that they have toxic shock syndrome, and then they lose a leg or they die in their sleep. I mean, that seems extreme, but IUD expulsion is incredibly rare. I mean, this isn't supposed to happen. So, you know, when we talk about medical outliers, that's me. So if it's not likely to happen, it probably will. But also just this idea that, like, how do I manage to, like, how do I manage to have my body in this much distress, and I'm still, like, you know, putting together a GSR toolkit and, you know, going to business meetings and going to work and, you know, showing up to speak at an H&I meeting at the, you know, how do I just keep going and keep going and keep going? And it has to do with, like, the way that I'm conditioned, that, like, pain is just a part of life. That, like, pain is expected and pain is the norm and pain is the standard, and that, like, yeah, the pain I'm in right now might be more than usual, but, like, life keeps going and I just have to show up and power through and keep going and keep going and keep going. And I don't know if that's a reflection of my strength and my perseverance or whatever, or if it's just a reflection of, like, dysfunction. And I feel really let down. I feel really disappointed. That, like, listen, I have been reaching out for help and for support and for companionship and for anybody to help me through this, and I have felt so alone. And I have had people walk away from me and, like, leave my life, and I've lost friendships, and I thought about all of this just laying on this exam table. I thought about how, like, my insides were being torn apart and I was being punished in the outside world for not being able to, like, hold it together better, you know, because I was, like, so weak that I couldn't muscle through this pain more efficiently. And, you know, I've already punished myself so much, and I've had so much guilt and so much shame that I've carried for, like, falling short in those areas. And I would never treat someone else that way. I would never look at someone else who's struggling with, like, physical sickness and tell them, like, you're just being a bitch. Everything hurts right now. I mean, everything hurts right now. And this isn't even, like, the end of the road, right? So I still have to go get, like, a sonogram, and I still have to wait for my cultures to get back, and I have to do this round of antibiotics, and I have to hope that this, that I start to feel better from this, and the hope is that there'll be some relief, but, like, I don't even know what the next step is.